Today I'm going to be showing you how to make some timeless, gritty, cinematic hip-hop beats just like Pharrell did for Let God Sort 'Em Out, the new album by Clipse. Let's dive straight into it. Okay, so to be honest, I was actually going to do a Neptunes video and break down their like 2000s style, but then I listened to the Clipse album finally and it's inspired me so much. But make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, because next week's video is going to be a full Neptunes breakdown on their style. Here's a little teaser of one of those beats. But anyways, back to the Clipse album. Let's start off with the method. So the main thing is we want grit. We want it to be dark. We want it to be cinematic. But the most important thing by far is serving the artist. These beats need to be simple. There needs to be plenty of space for the artist, plenty of pockets for them to find their sort of flow. And then to get the grit and the depth and darkness that we need, we're going to be using a lot of sampling and then combining that with interesting accent sounds. So starting off, we're going to be using Serato sample to do the sampling. So here's a sample pack that I've just found on Reddit recently, and I'm just going to drag in this one sample that's got some cool piano sounds that I really want to use. We'll go to find samples. So you can hear already that piano is like really interesting, it's got good texture, and you can just instantly hear some like dark boom bap vibes of that. So we're working at 80 beats per minute, and the first thing I like to do is just pitch down the sample. That's what's going to add a lot of depth and grit to these beats, because we're going to bring everything down. So it's at D minor at the moment. And now, as usual, it's just about finding some chops to do, so a little bit of experimentation. And then we'll do like a B section. So with a bit of fiddling, we've now got two sections that are very eerie, very dark and cinematic, I feel like. We just need to process the sample now and we can do some cool stuff with it. First, we'll just do an EQ to cut out some of the lows, because we're going to put an 808 or a bass in at some point. Just like that for now should be okay. And then it's worth doing another EQ just to take out some annoying frequencies. Yeah, just a little bit there maybe. And now I want to add quite a bit more grit and distortion to this. So we're going to use some Decapitator, which is one of my favorite plugins for really grunging up some sound. But you can see now there's a bit more of an issue with some frequencies here, so let's just fix that up a bit. Yeah, right there. And to be fair, the good thing with Serato is we can just find that individual sample and mess around with it. Now, to be honest, when it comes to the drums for this, I think it's worth layering samples and breaks instead of programming them individually. So I'm going to use a break from this kit that I've been using a lot recently. In fact, I recommend all of his kits. Angelo, you can find it online. So he's got some really good drum breaks, especially that we're going to go through. So this is a good break because it's got a lot of texture and noise to it, and it's also got that vocal shout as well, which is pretty cool. And then just to play with the drums a little bit, we can throw some processing on there. So I'm going to use this preset from Articulate, which I use a lot on drums. As a transient shaper, it just makes them smack quite a bit more. Let's also put in some hi-hats just to add a bit more top end to the drums. Pretty simple stuff, right? I think all we need now is like a bass just to round out the main beat, and we'll use an 808 because I really want to get some hard hitting low end, and we just want to follow the chord progression from the sample chops that we've done. So now the 808 needs to sidechain to the kick. Obviously we're using a break, so it's going to be a bit difficult to get the exact frequency that we want. We could use track spacer or soothe too, which is what I generally do. But another option, if you've only got something like kickstart, then you can sort of manually do this pretty simply, but I'll quickly show you how. We've got the drum break here, and then on the track below it, which is going to be our kick sidechain, we're going to turn it really low in volume, can't even notice it, and then just literally get the kick and just drag it down like so. Just whenever there's a kick, we'll just literally copy that over. So now we've got a kick there, we can just go to our kickstart and we're just going to select kick sidechain. Cool, then all I've done is just play it at the same time as the POV acapella just to make sure the vibe fits, that there's plenty of space for the artist. Unfortunately, I can't show you with the acapella, otherwise I'll get copyrighted. But trust me, it sounds dope, and this is basically what we ended up with. Okay, for the next beat, I want to do something similar to Chains and Whips, which has got some really unique production, some really interesting elements. So what I've got is the Chains and Whips acapella. Again, making beats around an acapella is just a lot easier when you're trying to find the right pocket for the vocals. I'm going to keep that muted for the video, again, because of copyright, but just know that everything I'm adding here is because of fitting it to the acapella. So we want to start off with a kick. What I'm going to do is just, again, find a kick pattern from Angelo, just have that playing throughout the whole thing. So that's just like a standard 4 on the floor kick beat. It's also got a shaker that's adding a bit more rhythm and groove. Now for the bass pattern, you could play it in yourself, you could play it in MIDI, or you could get a sample, chop it up. Let's use a sample because it will have that depth and grit that I've mentioned beforehand. So I've got this bass layer stem from a sample pack, which pretty much fits the vibe that I want. Just really short and repetitive, but it's got like 3 notes and that's all you need. We just got a tuner on it so we can understand where we're sitting at. And then we'll EQ out a little bit of the higher end. Throw on the bark of dog just to add more of that depth that we need. And then a Fab Filter Satin just to allow us to get some frequencies going a little bit in the higher mids. And then finally we sidechain it to the kick. We use track spacer this time. Everything below maybe like 250 Hertz. So as simple as that, we've got a really interesting groove now, and it's really simple. We've got some percussion, we've got the bass. We just need to add some interesting accents, which can be done in a few different ways. And then let's add another melodic layer that's going to be a bit more busy and interesting. We'll go to Analog Lab for this, and I'm thinking an organ sound would be perfect. So the notes of the bass line are this: F sharp, A, B, C sharp. But what we're going to do with the organ is play the same notes, but the last note is going to be a C instead, and that's going to add dissonance. And dissonance is just going to add to the overall eerie, uneasy feeling and just really contribute to the gritty, dark textures that we're trying to do here. Now the last thing I want to add to this is a sample that's going to be like a little bit weird and just doing more like accent sounds, stabs and things like that. So I found this sample, which is from an old school track, just pitched it to match the same key, and the point is we just want to find random stabs like this. So then once you've recorded it, you just go in and find random bits that can work as like stabs. So hopefully that makes sense, just finding random bits, and it can come in like really sporadically. So then with a bit of fiddling, adding some more like random effects and things like that. Again, you're keeping it simple, but it's quite dark and gritty, and there's plenty of space for an artist to do their thing over it. Okay, for this last beat, we want to try and do something similar. We're going to start off with a sample. This time I've got this sample which I found digging on YouTube, and let's see what we can find.
These are the darling word my son.
So there's a lot of vocals in this one, so the cool thing with serrato is of course the stem separation. So let's just take out the vocals. So we've got a cool sample there. Obviously when it takes out the vocals it can sound a little bit warped and weird, so that's why it's important to add in other layers and make sure that you use this as a foundation to add a certain texture and vibe, but use other sounds to bring it more to life and sound a bit more modern. So there's a lot of cool parts of this sample we can use, but let's just keep it simple and do something groovy. Got these like rock and roll vibes with this. So now we want to process the sample again. We'll start off with an RC20, which is just one of my go-tos for a lot of easy processing. I'm also going to put on a Shaperbox preset, which I use a lot on my melodies because it just brings everything up, especially in the higher end. And then we'll EQ out all of the low end. So now we've got room for that bass that we want to add in. And in fact, the sample already has a really good like running bass line, which we could just leave in. So I think that will work better just to give it that real depth and texture. And in fact, we'll add a decapitator just to beef it up a bit. So now again for the drums, let's just use a break from this Angelo kit. I'm just really rinsing his kits at the moment because they're so good. The drum breaks have such good texture in there. So again, it's just a kick, but it's got all these weird other glitchy textures on top of it, which just makes it really unique. Now again, we want to add some melodic accent sound. So there's a lot of that electric guitar all over the album, but especially on Chains and Whips, we've got that Lenny Kravitz guitar. Let's do something similar to that. Let's just spice it up a bit. something like that, little accents, and again we'll just chop out the bits we need, we'll just quantize it. And you know what, I think an organ again will fit perfectly with this. Keeping it going with the accent sounds, let's just add a vocal stab of some kind. So once again, really simple, just a few layers, but I think it creates the perfect space and pocket for a rapper to flow over, and it also has that grit and darkness from the sample choice. Now quickly I'll show you just one other type of beat that's on the album, which is on Ace Trumpets and So Far Behind, where you've got this crazy glide synth used. So basically, once again, I was using the Ace Trumpets a cappella to make a beat around, and all we had to do was, for the hook, this really basic chord progression that's done in a bell sound with the arpeggiator. Really basic drum pattern that hits hard. So that heavy kick does a lot of lifting here. And then with the synth, to get that glide effect, I just use Diva. Any sort of saw synth will do. And then you see the glide, we just turn it up quite harshly, so you get that really cool effect with the notes gliding in. So I've just changed the chords slightly for my own beat, but this is what it sounded like altogether. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe for next week's video, which is going to be a full-on 2000s Neptunes breakdown. If you want to hear some of the beats that I upload daily, you can check out my beat channel in the description. And if you want to see a video where I show more about what Serato can do, check out this video right here.